This is your time to let go. A journey of calm and serenity. Follow the rhythm of my voice into deep rest, with every note of the music, designed with soothing frequencies, allowing your body, mind, and soul to drift into perfect relaxation. And now take a deep breath in and out and in and out. It's the early hours of December 13th, 1943. The airfield in Assam, India, still wrapped in mist and the echo of the night. Dawn creeps over the jungle hills like a slow-burning fire amber light, touching rows of P-40 Warhawks lined up on the muddy tarmac. Somewhere among them sleeps Second Lieutenant Philip R. Adair, his head resting against the side of his tent, boots still on, his flight jacket draped over a chair. He hasn't slept well in days. The humid air makes every breath feel heavy, but the silence doesn't last. A distant siren wails across the field, sharp, metallic, and full of urgency. Moments later, a voice crackles through the radio. "Banshees, scramble! Enemy inbound, repeat! Enemy inbound from the east." Adair's eyes snap open. The exhaustion evaporates in an instant. He grabs his helmet, bolts out into the warm morning haze, and runs for his aircraft, his beloved P-40 Newton's Warhawk, tail number 44. He'd given her a name that only the men in his squadron truly understood: Lulubelle. She wasn't the fastest plane or the newest, but she was his, and together they'd survived 43 missions over Burma and China. Her olive-drab skin bore the marks of near misses, patched bullet holes, and the faint ghost of a painted skull beneath the exhaust ports, the proud symbol of the Burma Banshees. The ground crew waves him forward. Engines roar to life all around him. Propellers slice the morning fog into ribbons of white. Adair climbs up into the cockpit, slides the canopy shut, and flicks through the startup routine almost by instinct. Mixture rich, throttle 1/4, prop pitch set, magnetos on. The Allison engine coughs once, twice, then bursts to life with a deep, throaty growl that shakes the air. The radio sputters. 4 bogies, repeat 4 bogies, 20 miles east. He eases the throttle forward. Lulubelle surges down the runway, her wheels throwing mud and mist behind her. At 80 miles an hour, the tail lifts. At 1 to 10, the ground falls away. He's airborne. The moment he clears the tree line, the world opens into endless blue and white. Clouds roll like mountains beneath him. Far to the east, sunlight spills through the clouds, and through it, small dark specks moving in tight formation. Adair squints. They're too many. Way too many. He presses the transmit button. "Control, this is Adair. I've got multiple bogies. Looks like more than 4. Can't count them all yet." The reply comes, distorted by static. "Copy that, 2-6. Banshee flight still taking off. Do not engage. Repeat, do not engage until you've got support." He glances at the altimeter climbing past 8,000 feet and bites his lip. Below him lies the airbase. Just beyond it, the supply depots. And beyond those, a field hospital. If those bombers get through, they'll level everything. He can't wait. He pushes the throttle forward until the lever hits the stop. The Warhawk surges ahead, her engine howling. Through the gunsight glass, the enemy formation grows larger. 4 flights each of 6 Mitsubishi Ki-21 Sally bombers flying tight in box formation. And above and below them, glinting like dragonflies in the sun, a 6M0 escorts. Over 60 planes in total, 1 man against 60. The rational part of his mind screams to turn back. But that small, reckless spark, the one that made him a fighter pilot, won't let him. He keys the mic again, voice calm but tight. Control. This is a dare. They're gonna be releasing their bombs pretty quick. I don't know if I can do much of anything, but I'll do my best to mess up their attack. He flips the gun safety cover. 6 .50 caliber Brownings hum to life, belts of ammunition feeding from the wings. He angles high left the sun at his back and dives toward the lead bomber flight. Tracer rounds arc across the sky like streaks of fire. They rake through the formation, slicing between wings and fuselages. Adair sees the bombers jolt, some banking clumsily, trails of smoke spilling from their exhausts. He doesn't wait to see the result, he's already past them, rolling left, diving under the formation. The radio crackles again. The other Banshees are finally airborne, but Adair's already deep in the swarm. Through the canopy, he catches flashes of sunlight on silver wings, Zeros diving. He jerks the stick full forward into the left corner. -G. An outside roll. The world spins violently, sky, jungle, sky, ocean, sky again. The seat harness bites into his shoulders. He can feel his stomach lift into his throat. Then level flight. He's alive. For a moment, there's only the steady growl of the Allison engine and his own heartbeat thudding in his ears. The Zeros are climbing again, regrouping to guard the bombers. Below him, dark dots fall from the bellies of the bombers. Bombs. He tracks their fall and exhales, the patterns wide. Off target, they'll hit open ground. He allows himself a single, shaky breath. Maybe he'd made them nervous enough, but as the sound of distant explosions fades, he realizes the fight isn't over. He banks sharply, the sun flashing off Lulubelle's wings, and looks back toward the bomber trail. He could head home now. No one would blame him. He'd gone up alone, faced impossible odds, and lived. But that same fire still burns in his chest. It worked once. Maybe it'll work again. He pushes the throttle open. Lulubelle answers with a deep metallic roar, eager for another run. He climbs into the blazing morning sky, the light turning the canopy gold, and sets his sights once more on the black specks ahead, a single pilot rising alone into the storm. The sun has now risen above the jungle hills, bleeding through the clouds like molten gold. The morning haze glows in pale orange and silver as Lieutenant Philip R. Adair levels off at 12,000 feet. Below him, The jungle is a living sea of green, endless, ancient, silent. Above him, war is waiting. He wipes the sweat from his brow. His flight gloves are damp. The P-40's cockpit is stifling hot. The air smells of oil, metal, and the faint tang of cordite from his earlier bursts. Ahead, tiny black crosses on the horizon. The Japanese formation still moves steadily west toward the Allied base. He can see them now more clearly. 4 tight V formations of Ki-21 Sally bombers, each guarded by a shifting halo of Zero fighters. They move with machine-like precision, indifferent to the lone Warhawk closing in behind them. Adair checks his fuel. He's already burned more than he should have. His ammo counters show only half-filled belts. Still, he cannot turn back. Something inside him, pride, stubbornness, maybe even duty, keeps him pressing forward. "All right, Lulubelle," he mutters through clenched teeth. "Let's go give 'em hell again." He climbs a few hundred feet above the formation, swings wide to the right, and rolls into the attack. The engine roars as the nose dips. The sky rushes past in a blur. He feels the vibration of 6 .50 caliber guns beneath his boots. Tracer fire streaks ahead, glowing lines that vanish into the cloud of bombers. He doesn't aim for one in particular. He just wants to shake them, scatter them, make them think twice. Then he sees movement. Tiny silver flashes sunlight on wingtips. Zeros. They've seen him this time. He's still a few hundred yards out when they break from their escort posts like angry hornets, rolling over and diving toward him. One from the left, one from the right, 2 from above. 4 Zeros converging. His mind narrows to a single tunnel of instinct. He picks the top one and fires too far. The Zero jinx, rolls, vanishes under his wing. He switches targets. The lower one, the stupid one, flying too steady. He squeezes the trigger. The P-40 shudders as all 6 guns bark. Flashes of red and gold tear into the Zero's fuselage. He sees the left landing gear drop, a sure sign of a hit. A moment later, a thin ribbon of smoke trails from the cowling. Gotcha. The Zero rolls violently, flames licking at its side, and spirals down toward the jungle below. Adair banks hard left to avoid the wreckage. The sky behind him blossoms with black dots of tracer fire. He doesn't look back. He knows the others are still there. Instead, he dives again full throttle, engine screaming, and the world turns into streaks of blue and green. He levels out low, skimming the treetops. For a few precious seconds, the enemy loses him. The airspeed indicator trembles near 400 miles per hour. Then he pulls up sharp, almost vertical, climbing back into the fight. "What the hell am I doing?" he whispers. He can feel his pulse pounding in his neck. His arms ache from the control forces. The P-40 isn't meant for this kind of punishment. But there's the formation again, steady and relentless. And there's the tiny flash of sunlight on the bomb racks. He knows they're getting close to their next target. He can't let them go unchallenged. He lines up again for another run, but this time he doesn't get the chance. From his left movement, sudden and bright. A Zero climbing straight at him, nose pointed like a spear. He sees the muzzle flashes. Oh, damn. The cockpit explodes with sound. Wham, wham, wham. It feels like gravel hitting metal, like hail on a tin roof. Except every impact is death. Glass shards spray across his visor. Warning lights blink. A flash of fire bursts behind the seat, orange tongues licking up past the armor plate. Adair slams the stick forward, rolls into a dive. Wind tears through the bullet holes in the fuselage. The engine howls in protest. Smoke fills the cockpit. He can't breathe. For a heartbeat, he thinks the plane will explode. Then the fire snuffs out. The rush of air from the dive has smothered it. He blinks sweat and soot from his eyes. Still alive, the jungle rushes up to meet him fast. Impossibly fast. He pulls the stick back with both hands, but the controls feel heavy, sluggish. The trim's been hit. The cable might be gone. The P-40 groans. The wings flex. The treetops fill the windscreen. He can see individual leaves, sunlight flashing off them. Come on, baby, come on. He yanks harder. Every muscle in his arms screams. The horizon begins to tilt up, and the Warhawk finally responds, clawing its way back into the sky. He lets out a ragged laugh, half relief, half disbelief. He's clear, but not safe. The stick still feels wrong. The trim wheel spins uselessly. He's losing altitude every minute. And somewhere above him, the Zeros are still circling. He presses the transmit switch. Control. This is Adair. Lulubelle's hit bad. I'm about 100 miles out. Gonna try to make it back, but she's fighting me. Static, answers him. Then a faint voice. Copy that, Adair. Do what you can. We'll clear the strip. He nods to no one, jaw set. He knows how far 100 miles is over jungle. If he goes down, rescue could take days, if it comes at all. The stick trembles in his hands. The plane wants to nose down. He can't hold it level, so he improvises. He loops the shoulder harness around the control column, pulling it tight, but it's not long enough. He curses under his breath. Then a glint catches his eye. Another plane, distant, moving the opposite direction. For a moment, he tenses friend or foe. As it draws closer, he sees the rounded wingtips, the rising sun insignia, a Zero smoking, limping along, losing altitude. Maybe one of the ones he hit earlier. They pass within a quarter mile. The Zero pilot turns his head. Their eyes meet for a second through two canopies of glass and gun smoke. Two men, both wounded, both barely in the air. Adair thinks, to hell with it. He banks hard. The P-40 groans, dives. He lines up behind the enemy plane, presses the trigger, click, nothing. The pneumatic system hisses as it recharges. Empty. He's out of ammunition. He flies past the Zero, close enough to see the holes in its wings, the fluttering fabric. The Japanese pilot rolls away, trailing smoke, firing back, but the rounds miss wide. Adair climbs again, shaking his head. heart pounding. Out of bullets, out of luck, he mutters. Still, he's alive. That's something. He checks his compass, turns west. The jungle stretches beneath him, endless and green. Every mile he can cover by air saves days of walking if he has to bail out. The controls fight him again. He's losing altitude, the nose dipping lower each minute. He needs a plan. Then it hits him a crazy idea. But maybe it'll work. He rolls the P-40 upside down. Immediately, the nose rises. Gravity, inverted, helping where the trim can't. Well, I'll be damned, he says. The engine smooths out. The climb returns. For a few moments, it feels almost normal, except he's flying upside down. Then the Allison coughs. Fuel flow interrupted. He flips back upright, the engine steadies. He does it again. Upside down climbs. Right side up, engine back. Over and over. Like a strange rhythm between life and death. Each inversion gains him another few miles. Each roll, another chance. By the time he finally sees the faint silver ribbon of runway cutting through the trees, he's exhausted, drenched in sweat. His arms numb. Almost home, girl, he whispers. He flips the plane upside down one last time, lowers the landing gear, white-rimmed wheels locking into place. Then he rolls upright, lines up with the runway, and coaxes Lulubelle down. The Warhawk touches the ground in a cloud of dust and smoke. Sparks shower from the wingtips, but she holds. She's home. When the propeller finally stops spinning, the silence feels unreal. Adair leans back, breathing hard. Outside, mechanics and medics run toward him. He just stares at the number painted beneath the canopy, 44. His 44th mission, and somehow his luckiest. The jungle swallowed him whole. When the Warhawk struck the canopy, it tore through trees like paper metal, shrieking, wings snapping, leaves and fire twisting together in a storm of green and orange. Then, silence. For a long moment, there was nothing but the faint hiss of cooling metal and the distant chatter of unseen birds. Adair's world was dark. The cockpit canopy was shattered. Branches pierced through the fuselage. The instrument panel cracked like glass. He blinked, blood in his eyes. Everything hurt. His leg throbbed. Smoke crept into his throat, thick and oily. He reached for the harness release. It jammed. He hit it again and the buckle snapped open. He fell sideways, half out of the cockpit, and dropped onto soft earth below. The air hit him like a wave of heat. The jungle smelled alive soil, sap, and something wild underneath. He tore off his flight mask and lay there for a moment, staring up at a sliver of sky visible through the smoke. A bright blue sky, streaked with the black trail of his fall. He should have been dead. He knew it. His hands trembled as he crawled away from the wreck. Lulubelle's right wing was gone, ripped off somewhere in the trees. Her tail section was still smoldering. One of the .50 caliber guns lay twisted nearby, gleaming faintly. "You did good, girl," he whispered, voice raw. He dragged himself a few meters farther before the first explosion hit, the remaining fuel tanks igniting in a roar of orange light. The ground shook beneath him. Flames licked the trees, and black smoke rose like a signal to the whole valley. Somewhere out there, someone would have seen it. He didn't know who would find him first, friend or enemy. He couldn't stay. He tore a strip from his parachute silk, wrapped it around his bleeding arm, and began to move. Every step was agony. The jungle pressed close, thick and wet, vines curling around his boots. Insects droned in his ears, 1,000 tiny engines of their own. He walked until the adrenaline ran out. Then he crawled. By dusk, he found a stream, shallow, clear water running over stones. He dropped to his knees and drank greedily, not caring about the dirt. The water was warm, but it felt like life itself. When the sun set, the jungle changed. The light faded fast, replaced by a deep indigo gloom. Frogs began to call. Something howled in the distance. The air felt heavier, as if the night itself was watching him. He pulled himself against the roots of a banyan tree and listened. Far off, he heard engines, Japanese patrol planes, searching low with their lights. They'd seen the smoke. He pressed his face into the dirt, holding his breath until the sound faded. Only then did the trembling start. Not from fear, or maybe not just from fear, from exhaustion, from pain, from the simple realization that he was completely alone in an ocean of trees. He took out the one thing still intact from his flight suit, a small metal lighter with the 89th Fighter Squadron insignia engraved on it. He flicked it open, a single spark, then flame. He stared at it, hypnotized. The tiny flickering light, a reminder that fire could still exist in this world of shadows. He thought of the base, of hail, of the smell of aviation fuel at dawn. He thought of the radio crackling. Do not engage until you've got support. He smiled bitterly. Support never came. The flame died out. He leaned back, eyes half closed, and whispered to the darkness, "Guess it's just you and me now, Burma." Then, a sound soft, rhythmic, too steady to be animal. Footsteps. He froze. A flicker of movement between the trees' silhouettes, faint light reflecting off metal. Voices low, sharp, Japanese. Patrol. Adair's pulse spiked. He rolled silently into a ditch, covering himself with leaves and mud. The soldiers' lanterns passed within 20 feet of him, casting pale light over the wreckage glow still visible through the trees. They stopped. One shouted something. Another pointed toward the crash site. Then a burst of machine gun fire. A short, brutal echo in the dark. Adair held his breath. They were finishing off what was left of the plane. After a few moments, they moved on, their lights fading into the distance. Silence returned. But it was a different silence now, one filled with the sound of his own heartbeat and the knowledge that every movement, every breath, might give him away. He lay there for hours, afraid to sleep, staring at the faint stars between the branches. He thought of home, of snow, of his mother's kitchen, of things that no longer felt real. Then, exhaustion won. His eyes closed. Somewhere far away, an owl called, and the jungle kept its secrets. December 1415, 1943. Irgendwo in den Hügeln von Nordburma. When dawn came, it came slowly, a thin silver light seeping through the green ceiling of the jungle. Mist coiled around the trees like smoke, and every leaf dripped with dew. Adair woke with the taste of iron in his mouth, and the ache of the previous night deep in his bones. His uniform was torn, the once bright patch of the Burma banshees stained with mud and blood. The air was heavy and alive, humming, buzzing, whispering. It wasn't quiet. The jungle was never quiet. He sat up carefully, listening. No engines, no voices. Only the distant cry of a gibbon echoing through the valley. His first thought was water. His second, direction. If he could find the Irrawaddy River, maybe he could follow it south. Maybe someone would find him before the Japanese did. He stood, leaning against the broad trunk of a kapok tree. The world tilted. He blinked until the dizziness passed. Then he began to walk. The hours blended together, each step a rhythm. Breath, pain, breath, pain. He counted them at first, then stopped. Counting meant thinking, and thinking meant fear. Sometimes he thought he heard the distant sound of propellers. Sometimes it was only wind through the treetops. At noon, he found an old trail half hidden by vines. Boot prints, faint and weeks old. Not Japanese, he guessed. Perhaps Kachin tribesmen, the silent ghosts of these hills who fought alongside the Allies. He followed it. It wound upward, through ridges and valleys, past trees so tall they seemed to scrape the clouds. And then the smell hit him. Smoke. He dropped to his knees, crawling forward through ferns. Beyond the next rise, he saw it. A small clearing, a hut built from bamboo and palm leaves. Smoke curling from a stone pit. Two figures moved near the fire, dark-skinned, barefoot, rifles slung over their shoulders. Kachin scouts. Relief and fear tangled in his chest. If they were friendly, salvation. If not, he stepped out, raising both hands. American! U.S. Air Force, he called, voice cracked and hoarse. The men spun around, rifles snapping up. One shouted something sharp in his native tongue. Adair froze. Then, after a tense pause, the older of the two stepped closer. Banshee? The man asked, his English rough but clear. Adair nodded quickly. Yes, Lulubelle, P-40. The scout studied him for a long moment, then lowered his rifle and gestured toward the hut. Come, safe here. Adair almost collapsed from relief. Inside, the air was thick with wood smoke and herbs. They gave him a tin cup of boiled water and a small bundle of rice. He ate slowly, eyes half closed. The food was bland, but it tasted like home. The older scout, who introduced himself as Tun Shin, examined the bandages on Adair's arm. He clicked his tongue and replaced them with clean strips of cloth, soaked in some kind of sap that smelled of pine. "Japanese patrol? Here, 2 days," he said, pointing east. "Now, go south." He looked up. "Serious? You lucky. They see fire. Think you die." Adair smiled faintly. "Maybe I did." Tun Shin didn't smile back. He simply nodded, then said, "Sleep." That night, the jungle pressed close again, but now it felt different. Safer, somehow. He slept inside the hut on a mat of woven reeds, the hum of insects around him like the static of a distant radio. In his dreams, he saw the sky, the silver clouds over Assam, the sunlight flashing off bomber wings, and Lulubel's guns lighting the horizon. He heard his radio again, that thin, ghostly voice. "Control to Adair, control to Adair." But the signal faded before he could answer. When he woke, Tun Shin was gone. Only the younger scout remained, sharpening a knife with quiet, steady motions. He looked up once, nodded, and handed Adair a small bundle, the dried meat, water, a compass with a cracked glass face. "South," he said simply, then pointed, "Follow river. You find friend." Adair hesitated. He wanted to thank them, to promise he'd send help, but the words caught in his throat. He just saluted instead. The young scout returned the gesture solemnly, as if it were a prayer. By midday, Adair was moving again. The sun burned overhead. He crossed ravines, streams, stretches of jungle so dense he had to crawl beneath the roots. At one point he slipped, tumbling down a muddy slope, stopping just short of a snake coiled near a rock. It hissed once, then vanished into the undergrowth. He laughed breathless, half mad. "You missed, pal. Gotta be faster than that." Every sound now carried echoes. The drone of insects like engines, the rustle of leaves like distant gunfire. He could feel Lulubel with him still, the hum of her Allison engine somewhere deep in his chest. As the sun sank, he reached a ridge overlooking a vast valley of mist. Far below, a river wound like silver through the green, and there barely visible, the glint of corrugated metal roofs. An Allied outpost. He sank to his knees, relief flooding him so suddenly it made him dizzy. He was going home, or so he thought, because as he stood, the ground trembled faintly, a low, growing rumble. He looked up. 3 black shapes were approaching from the east. Planes, Japanese reconnaissance. He froze as they passed overhead, their shadows sliding over the trees. If they saw him, it was over. He pressed flat to the ground, heart hammering. Engines droned past, fading into distance. Silence returned. He waited a full minute before breathing again, then another. Finally, he whispered, "Not today," and began his slow, careful descent toward the river, each step carrying him farther from death and closer to whatever waited beyond the mist. The jungle thinned slowly, like a curtain being drawn aside. For 2 days, Adair had followed the sound of water, a steady, distant whisper that became his compass. When he finally reached the edge of the trees, the Irrawaddy spread before him like a living mirror, wide and pale beneath the morning haze. The air here smelled different, fresher, cleaner, with a hint of silt and rain. He stood there for a while, motionless, watching the fog drift over the surface. He had dreamed of this river for days, a line between chaos and safety, between the wild heart of Burma and the thread of civilization beyond it. But it wasn't over. The current was strong, the far bank distant. He crouched near the waterline and cupped a handful to his lips. It was warm, muddy, alive. It grounded him. He looked down at his reflection, gaunt, pale, eyes sunken, beard shadowing his jaw. The man staring back at him was someone else now, not the smiling pilot who'd once posed beside his P-40 with the number 44 gleaming on its flank. This one had seen too much sky, too much fire, too much loneliness. "Come on, Phil," he whispered. One more push. He took off his boots, tied them around his neck, and waded in. The water clutched at him instantly, cold and heavy. Each stroke was an argument against exhaustion. He swam diagonally, using the current instead of fighting it, something drilled into him during survival training back in Arizona. That felt like another lifetime. Halfway across, he saw movement upriver, a small canoe, dark against the mist, 2 figures inside. For a heartbeat, panic. Japanese patrol? He ducked lower, letting only his eyes break the surface. The canoe drifted closer, not soldiers. Locals, a man and a young boy, both barefoot, wearing worn tunics, paddling silently. When they spotted him, they hesitated. Adair raised one arm weakly, gasping out, "American, U.S. flyer." The man's eyes widened. He spoke quickly to the boy, then turned the canoe toward him. Moments later, rough hands pulled Adair aboard. He collapsed at their feet, coughing up water. The boy laughed softly, nervous but kind. The man offered a single word, heavy with accent. "Friend." They took him down river for hours. The world passed in slow motion, the glide of water, the buzz of dragonflies, the cry of distant birds. Adair drifted in and out of consciousness, the rhythmic dip of the paddle lulling him into something like peace. When he woke again, the light had changed. The sun hung low and golden, painting the river in molten amber. Ahead, a collection of wooden huts rose from the bank, a small Allied field outpost, guarded by men in slouch hats and khaki uniforms. British troops, Gurkhas. The canoe scraped against the shore, and the man who'd rescued him shouted something in Burmese. A pair of soldiers appeared instantly, rifles ready. When they saw Adair's torn flight suit and U.S. insignia, their expressions shifted from suspicion to astonishment. "Bloody hell," one of them muttered. "You're the Yank who went down 2 days ago. They said you were done for." Adair tried to stand, failed, and laughed weakly. "Almost was." They helped him up, supporting him between them as they led him into camp. The smell of cooking fires hit him first. Rice, oil, smoke. Then came the sound, a generator humming, a radio crackling, distant laughter. It was the sound of people, of life. Inside the makeshift infirmary, a British medic examined him quickly. Minor burns, dehydration, exhaustion, nothing fatal. "You're one lucky bastard, sir," the medic said with a grin. "Most don't walk out of that jungle at all." Adair smiled faintly, eyes closing. Didn't walk out, crawled. He slept for nearly 12 hours. When he woke, it was dark again, the kind of dark that feels almost kind. Rain drummed gently on the tin roof. Someone had placed a mug of tea beside his bed. It was lukewarm, but perfect. He sat up slowly, feeling the stiffness in his limbs, the ghost of the jungle still clinging to him. Outside, he heard a familiar voice, American, loud, laughing. He stumbled to the doorway and looked out. Two men in khaki flight suits were talking near the campfire. One turned and froze. It was Captain Hale. Adair? The disbelief in his voice was almost comical. He strode over and gripped Adair's shoulders. "Jesus, Phil, we thought you were gone. You punched out in the middle of nowhere." Adair just laughed, hoarse, tired, relieved beyond words. Guess Burma wasn't done with me yet. They sat by the fire long into the night, trading stories over rationed whiskey. Hale told him how the squadron had searched for 2 days, how the Japanese had broadcast claims of a downed American ace. Adair told him about the jungle, the Kachin scouts, the upside-down flight, the river. When he finished, Hale shook his head. "You realize you just fought 60 enemy planes and then survived Burma on foot. They're going to have to invent a new medal for that." Adair smiled faintly. "I'll take a hot shower instead." Later that night, as the fire died down, he wandered toward the river again. The moon hung low, mirrored in the calm surface. Somewhere far above, he imagined the distant drone of bombers heading north, the same sound that had started it all. He touched the silver star, pinned hastily to his jacket, and whispered to the quiet air, "Lulubelle, we made it." The jungle on the opposite bank shimmered faintly in the moonlight, and for a moment, it almost seemed to breathe back. The rain never stopped. For 3 days straight, it came down like a gray curtain over the mountains of Assam. Every drop hit the tin roofs and the jungle leaves with the same dull, endless rhythm. It was the kind of rain that soaked through everything, through skin, through fabric, through memory. Philip R. Adair sat beneath the overhang of a British transport truck, smoking a damp cigarette and staring at the mud. His uniform was still wrinkled and torn from the crash. The patch with the banshee skull was half burned away. His boots, still muddy from the Irrawaddy's banks, were starting to dry and crack. A convoy was being prepared. Trucks, jeeps, fuel drums, crates of .50 caliber rounds. Somewhere behind him, mechanics were working on another P-40. Its fuselage dented, its propeller bent like a broken fan blade. The war went on, always. Lieutenant Adair? He looked up. A British major stood in front of him, clipboard in hand, his khaki soaked dark by the rain. You're scheduled for transport to Jorhat. Command wants a full debrief. Then, after that, they'll decide whether to send you back to the States or back to duty. Adair gave a small nod, flicked the cigarette into the puddle. Understood, sir. The major hesitated, studying him. There was something in Adair's eyes, not exhaustion, not even fear, but distance. That quiet distance soldiers carried, when part of them never came back from the battlefield. You did a hell of a thing out there, son, the major said softly. 60 Japanese planes, alone. That's something they'll tell stories about. Adair smiled faintly. Let's hope they tell it better than I lived it. The convoy rolled out at dawn. Engines coughed and rumbled in the mist as they crawled along narrow roads carved into the hillsides. The jungle pressed close thick, green, heavy with the smell of wet earth and rotting leaves. Sometimes they passed wrecks of old trucks that had tumbled down the cliffs, rusted skeletons covered in vines, war relics, half swallowed by the land. Adair sat in the back of a truck, wrapped in a blanket, watching the landscape roll by in slow motion. Every once in a while, he caught a glimpse of something, a burned-out village, a group of barefoot children watching silently, a lone ox cart moving through the rain. In moments like that, the noise of the world faded, and he could almost hear the echo of his own engine again. The roar of Lulubelle diving, the wind screaming against the canopy, then the silence after. The long, endless silence. 2 days later, the convoy reached Jorhat Airfield. The place looked like a muddy island, surrounded by fog tents, planes, men moving like ghosts. An officer met him at the gate. Lieutenant Adair, welcome back. The brass has been waiting to see you. They led him through the camp to a small wooden building, part office, part barracks. Inside, the air was warm and smelled of coffee and damp paper. A U.S. intelligence officer, Captain Whitmore, sat behind a desk cluttered with maps and reports. Take a seat, Lieutenant. Thank you, sir. Whitmore studied him for a moment. You look like hell. Feel like it too. The captain smiled faintly. Let's start simple. You took off from Nanning Airfield on December 13th at 0900 hours? Yes, sir. I was scrambled to intercept incoming enemy bombers heading toward the base. And how many did you engage? Adair exhaled slowly. All of them. The captain raised an eyebrow. All of them? About 60, give or take. He went on to describe everything: the first dive, the long-range burst of tracer fire, the swarm of Zeros, the hits, the fire, the desperate dive through the clouds, the upside-down flight, the jungle, the river. Every word came out flat, measured, stripped of emotion. It was less like telling a story and more like reading a report of someone else's life. When he finished, there was a long silence. The only sound was rain ticking against the window. Finally, Whitmore spoke. That's one hell of a day, Lieutenant. Yes, sir. Do you believe You downed any enemy aircraft? One confirmed. Maybe two. The rest? He shrugged. Too many to count, too fast to care. Whitmore leaned back in his chair. You're being recommended for the Silver Star. It's already moving through channels. Sir, I didn't. You did your duty, Lieutenant. More than anyone could have asked. Adair stared out the window for a long time before replying. Yes, sir, I did my duty. That night, he was given a real bed for the first time in weeks. White sheets, a pillow, clean air. He lay there staring at the ceiling fan turning lazily above him. Every rotation hummed with the sound of a propeller in his mind. Sleep didn't come easily. When it did, it wasn't peaceful. He dreamed of fire, not the fire of destruction, but of memory. Lulubelle burning in the sky, her wings glowing like a falling star, and beneath it, the jungle rising to meet him, green and endless. He woke with a start before dawn, drenched in sweat. The rain had stopped. For the first time in weeks, the air was still. Outside, the horizon was painted gold. Somewhere, a plane engine started the low, throaty hum of another P-40 warming up. He walked to the edge of the runway and watched it taxi into the mist. The pilot waved as he passed. Adair raised a hand in return. The wind smelled like rain, and fuel the scent of home for men who had none. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "Let's hope your number's luckier than 44. The morning began in silence. No shouting, no sirens, no rush of boots on metal floors. Just the soft hum of generators, the distant creak of hangar doors, and the sound of a man waking from a dream he couldn't remember. Philip R. Adair sat at the edge of his bunk, staring at his hands. The scars on his palms had healed, but the skin still felt strange, as if it belonged to someone else. His flight jacket hung on a wooden peg beside him, faded, patched, smelling faintly of smoke and oil. Next to it, a new patch had been sewn on. Lulubelle, too. He ran his fingers over the stitching. The name felt wrong, but orders were orders. A new plane, a new start. Outside, the airfield shimmered under the early morning Sunday. Mist curled across the runways, blurring the outlines of parked aircraft. A whole row of P-40 Warhawks, their shark mouths grinning beneath chipped paint and streaks of mud. Ground crews moved like shadows through the haze, loading belts of ammunition, checking propellers, topping off fuel. Adair walked slowly between them, his boots crunching on the frost-hardened dirt. Every sound echoed the metallic clink of a wrench, the hiss of compressed air, the low rumble of an engine turning over. It was all familiar, yet distant, like a song he once knew the words to, but could no longer sing. He stopped beside his new bird. Lulubelle II was painted in bold white letters just below the cockpit. Someone had even added the same grinning skull emblem on the nose. The mechanics had done their best to make her identical, same shape, same weight, same heart. But Adair could feel it at once. She wasn't the same. "She's all yours, Lieutenant," said a young mechanic, wiping his hands on a rag. "Brand new Allison engine, smooth as silk. You'll love her." Adair smiled faintly. "Thanks, kid. I'll take good care of her." The mechanic grinned. "We named her like the old one. Thought it might bring you luck." Adair nodded. Luck. He'd stopped believing in that word a long time ago. As he climbed into the cockpit, a familiar smell hit him: leather, fuel, and sunlight on metal. His fingers traced the throttle lever, the worn edges of the control panel, the cold touch of the stick. It was like shaking hands with an old ghost. He closed the canopy, and for a brief moment, the world outside disappeared. Only the hum of his breathing filled the glass bubble. He pressed the starter switch. The engine coughed once, then twice, and roared to life. A deep, rolling growl that vibrated through his bones. The propeller spun into a blur. The whole plane trembled as if remembering its purpose. Adair eased the throttle forward. The Warhawk began to roll, its shadow stretching long across the runway. As the wheels lifted from the ground, a strange calm settled over him. It felt like stepping out of time itself. The sky opened up above the mountains, vast, endless, and pale. The clouds lay below him like an ocean of glass. Sunlight spilled across the wings, turning the dull olive paint into gold. Up here, there was no war, no death, just the sound of the engine and the rhythm of the heart that still refused to stop beating. He leveled off at 10,000 feet and let the plane drift. His eyes moved over the horizon, the deep green valleys, the twisting rivers, the faint smoke rising from distant villages. It was all so peaceful from up here, so impossibly peaceful. And yet, somewhere beyond those clouds, men were dying. Men he would soon face again. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small photo, the same one he had carried through Burma. A woman, smiling faintly, standing beside a P-40 back home. Her handwriting on the back read, "Come home when you can. I'll be waiting." He closed his eyes. He could almost hear her voice. Then he folded the photo and slid it back into his pocket, close to his heart. Over the radio, a voice crackled. "Eagle 1, this is Control. Confirm you're airborne?" "Affirmative, Control. Eagle 1, climbing to patrol altitude." "Copy that. Watch your 6 out there. Intelligence reports new Japanese activity near Lashio." "Understood." The voice faded into static. Adair adjusted his heading. The clouds below shifted like waves, revealing glimpses of the land beneath: green jungles, brown rivers, the faint scars of bombed-out airstrips. Each one a memory, each one a reminder. He felt it then, that familiar tension in his chest. The waiting, the knowing, the pull between duty and the wish to never fire another bullet again. Hours passed. No enemies appeared. Only the sun, drifting lower, painting the sky in amber and violet. Adair flew until the fuel gauge began to dip. Then he turned for home. As he descended through the mist, the air grew heavy again, filled with the scent of earth and engine oil. The runway lights flickered below. He touched down gently, the tires hissing against the ground, the engine's roar fading to a whisper. When he cut the power, silence filled the cockpit once more. He sat there for a long moment, hands still on the controls, watching the last sliver of daylight slip beyond the hills. For the first time in months, he felt something close to peace. Not joy, not relief, just peace, quiet and temporary, like a held breath. He climbed down, his boots touching the earth. The mechanic waved at him from the hangar. "How'd she fly, Lieutenant?" Adair gave a faint smile. "She flies fine. The sky still feels the same." The boy nodded, not understanding the weight of the words. Adair turned his gaze upward one last time, the stars just starting to appear, one by one. Each one a memory of those who never came back. Each one a light that refused to go out. The morning fog lay thick over the airfield. Engines idled. Silhouettes of P-42s looming like steel ghosts in the gray light. Adair walked among them, helmet under arm, boots sinking slightly into the damp earth. He had flown enough sorties now to know the rhythm: takeoff, engagement, return, debrief. Yet every mission felt new. Every flight a gamble between life and death. The squadron had changed. Faces he remembered from last month were gone, some transferred, some claimed by the skies over Burma. A new set of pilots filled the spaces, young men with eager eyes and trembling hands. They had heard the legend of Eagle One, the man who had faced 60 enemy planes and survived. Some looked at him with awe, some with fear. Adair adjusted his flight jacket and climbed into Lulubelle II. The cockpit smelled faintly of oil and old leather, a comfort in an uncertain world. He ran through the pre-flight checks slowly, deliberately. Every dial, every gauge, every lever mattered. A slip, a miscalculation, and the sky itself would become a tomb. The squadron was briefed for a patrol over the Northern Valley. Intelligence reported enemy troop movements and reconnaissance flights. It wasn't a combat mission, not yet, but the mountains had eyes, and the Japanese were rarely still. Adair led the line, wings cutting through the mist, engines vibrating like distant thunder. Below them, the valley stretched in shades of green and brown, rivers winding like silver ribbons. Villages dotted the landscape, smoke curling lazily from chimneys. Men moved through fields, unaware that their lives were now intersecting with war in the sky. "Stay tight," Adair's voice came over the radio, calm but authoritative. The new pilots flinched slightly at the sound of his voice, the low tone that carried weight. One of them, a young lieutenant named Carter, whispered to himself, "That man, he's a ghost." Hours passed without incident. The mist thickened, hanging like a curtain between them and the valley below. Then, out of the gray, shapes began to emerge: enemy reconnaissance planes, Zeros circling high above. Adair's heart quickened, but he remained steady. "Engage only if necessary. Don't chase shadows," he instructed, scanning the horizon. The enemy split into formation, diving for the valley. Adair's squadron responded. Bullets tore through clouds, tracers streaking like fiery threads. The first contact was brief. Violent, a dance of machines and men. Carter's plane shuddered as a bullet nicked the engine. He pulled hard on the stick, narrowly avoiding a fatal spin. Adair was on him instantly, covering the retreat, forcing the Zeros to veer. The sky filled with smoke, fire, and the acrid tang of gunpowder. By the time the skirmish ended, the air was filled with silence. 3 of Adair's squadron were missing. Carter's engine smoked but held. Adair circled, counting heads, listening to the radio for any response. It was then he realized the sky had claimed its due, and he had survived again. But not without cost. They returned to base, battered, exhausted, mourning those who did not. The ground crew worked silently, mechanics moving with precise, practiced motions. No words of comfort were exchanged, none were needed. Adair walked past the corpses of damaged planes, touching each nose lightly, whispering, "You fought well, brothers." That night, he sat alone in the officer's tent, staring at the ceiling. Outside, the jungle whispered in the wind, trees swaying like mourners at a grave. He took out a worn photograph, the same one he carried for months. "I made it back," he whispered softly, but not everyone else did. Sleep came fitfully. In dreams, he soared through clouds, chasing shadows, firing at invisible enemies. Waking, he felt the emptiness again, the hollowness of having survived while others had not. The war continued. The sky waited, and he would return to it tomorrow. The sun had barely risen over the dense jungles of Assam when Adair climbed into Lulubelle II. The morning was heavy with mist and humidity, the air thick as if it carried the weight of all the battles yet to come. The squadron gathered on the runway 8 planes, 8 pilots, each one knowing that the day ahead could be the last. Adair adjusted his helmet and tightened his straps. His heart beat steadily, his mind sharp. Yet beneath the calm, a familiar tension gnawed at him, the same tension he felt on the day of his 44th mission, months ago. Only now, he wasn't alone. This time, he had to lead men who looked to him not just for guidance, but for survival. Eagle 1 to all pilots. Maintain formation. Keep tight. We've got reconnaissance reports of 40+ enemy aircraft approaching from the north. Eyes open and trigger fingers ready. The engines roared to life, a chorus of steel and fire. The planes began their roll along the runway, lifting into the dense morning fog. Adair felt Lulubelle II respond beneath him, smooth, powerful, eager. High above the mountains, the enemy appeared like a dark cloud in the sky. A formation of Mitsubishi G4M Betty bombers, escorted by Zeros, cutting a path straight toward their base. The enemy intended to strike at vital supply depots and hospitals, a cruel and calculated attack. Adair's jaw tightened. "All right, men," he said over the radio, voice calm but commanding. "We're outnumbered but not outmatched. Stick to formation, watch your 6, and trust your wings. Let's show them what Eagle Squadron can do. They are God 18Z. The first contact was brutal. Bullets tore through the mist. Tracer fire painting arcs of light across the sky. Adair aimed carefully, diving on the lead Betty, sending tracer rounds across its left engine. The bomber shuddered, smoke curling from the fuselage, but it